We begin this afternoon with the latest on the COVID-19 coronavirus outbreak worldwide. The number of coronavirus cases in the U.S. has topped 500 as federal, state, and local officials in at least 35 states and the District of Columbia work to contain the outbreak. Confirmed cases in the U.S. climbed steadily over the weekend, and in places like Washington, D.C., there is great concern after a priest there was the district's first confirmed case. He had come in contact with more than 500 parishioners the week before. Good afternoon. I'm Kyrian Lee in for Kermit Miller. At least 21 Americans on board the Grand Princess's cruise ship tested positive for the virus will be treated at area hospitals, while hundreds of others are quarantined at U.S. military bases for 14 days. More on that in just a minute. And in the last hour, the entire country of Italy is now under lockdown, according to its Prime Minister, Giuseppe Conte. Conte says it was a measure taken in order to protect citizens. And with fears surrounding the coronavirus growing, an oil price fight between Saudi Arabia and Russia sent global markets in a tailspin to start the week. The Dow Jones Index dropped more than 2,000 points today, just more than a 7% total loss. It was the biggest one-day sell-off since the 2008 financial crisis. Within the first minute of trading, the Dow plummeted more than 1,800 points, and the S&P dropped more than 7%, which triggered a 15-minute pause in trading so investors could step back and understand what was going on. We will have more on the oil price dispute coming up later in this newscast. And new at 5 in St. Louis, pharmaceutical company Bayer told its employees an employee at the Creve Coeur site is being tested for coronavirus by the Missouri Department of Health, and the campus will close until further notice. In a statement, Bayer said the company learned on Sunday that an employee from their Creve Coeur site is being tested, but made it clear the case hasn't been confirmed as coronavirus infection. The email went on to say the employee being tested did give them a list of people they came in contact with. They're also asked to keep the company informed if they start feeling symptoms. Bayer announced their campus will be closed until further notice for cleaning and out of a quote, abundance of caution. As over the weekend, the first positive test in Missouri was confirmed in St. Louis County. In a news conference Saturday, Governor Mike Parson and the county's executive Sam Page announced the person was a college student who had studied abroad in Italy. Classes were canceled at 2 area schools today after authorities learned the father of the young woman tested, ignored advice on the quarantine, and went to a father-daughter dance at Villa Duquesne. The student who did test positive traveled from Italy to Chicago's O'Hare Airport, then took the Amtrak to St. Louis. Amtrak says the customer did not have symptoms when she boarded the train and is working with public health and emergency management teams to investigate the situation. Yesterday, cleaning and precautionary measures took place at Chicago's Union Station. Here locally in Fulton, organizers of the Churchill Fellows ceremony at the National Churchill Museum in Fulton announced today this weekend's ceremony will now be postponed until later this year. In a statement, organizers said the decision was, in quote, an abundance of caution. Passengers of the Grand Princess cruise ship off the coast of California are disembarking after being held on board for a week. 21 people on the ship tested positive for coronavirus, but as national correspondent Atra El-Nashar explains, that number may be misleading and point to a larger problem nationwide.
Stay out of crowds, don't do travel, above all, don't go near a cruise ship.
This stark warning coming in the wake of nearly 24 cases reported aboard the Grand Princess cruise ship. Out of more than 3,500 people on board, 46 of them were included in the first round of testing.
No, there's far more than 21 cases that are brewing on that ship. I would be stunned if no one else is infected.
Dr. Gary Simon at George Washington University says the number of cases on that ship and elsewhere are stunted by a lack in test kits. In other words, you don't know how many people have coronavirus if you can't test them.
If you don't know if you're infected or not, you may spread the disease. Now, we put people on quarantine to try to reduce that, but quarantine is very difficult.
Today, the director of the CDC said labs in all 50 states have the capacity to test for coronavirus, but there are only 75,000 tests available nationwide. At the same time, the federal government's lifted requirements for who's allowed to get a test.
We could have had more test kits. This could have been prepared. Once we saw the thing in China, first beginning in China, We should have known that this is going to get bad.
Still, the message coming from the White House Coronavirus Task Force, led by Vice President Pence, is this.
The risk to the American public of contracting the coronavirus does remain low.
The message of downplaying this is really unfortunate. And we're trying to talk ourselves out of it. No, it's real. It's going to happen. It's going to get worse.
The director of the CDC says more commercial tests will be available as private businesses develop them. And the White House Coronavirus Task Force has a goal of making millions of kits available by the end of this week. In Washington, I'm Atrel Mashar.
Coronavirus precautions are taking place at different local school districts. Tonight at the Columbia Public School Board meeting, Superintendent Peter Stiepelman gave updated information on what the district is doing. KRCG 13's Ashley Eddy joins us live now from Columbia with what is being discussed.
Carry on. Superintendent Peter Stiepelman says the district is closely monitoring the situation. He says the district is working with the CDC, the state and local health departments. Stiepelman stressed the need for students to stay home if sick and discuss tips on how to help prevent the virus. He says flyers have been put into all district buildings addressing how to properly hand wash. He says lead school custodians are explaining how to properly clean and checking in on how the school's cleaning process is going. Stiepelman says the district is working with the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education about canceling school. He says the option for online schooling is possible.